You got to be aware of the risk versus potential reward balance and the tax implications. When people actively try to avoid one risk, they end up taking a lot more of other risks on, and they have no idea that they're doing it. Welcome to How to Retire on Time, a show that answers your retirement questions. Say goodbye to that oversimplified advice you've heard hundreds of times. This show is all about getting down to the nitty gritty. As always, you can text your questions to 913-363-1234. And remember, this is just a show, not financial advice. David, what do we got today?
Hey, Mike, I have $1 million in my savings account from the sale of my business and nothing in 401k. How does this change my retirement planning?
Yeah, so notice the difference. This is from the sale of my business. If you are an entrepreneur, if you sold a business, there's a certain trajectory of wealth growth that is often neglected, because how do you get money into a 401k? You got to work. Usually it's through an employer and there's a match program. What if you're using all of your money to grow your wealth in a different way? Like a business owner.
Okay.
You don't sell your business and then get it all in the 401k.
Because you couldn't put like $1 million in one go in a 401k?
There's a limitation on how much can go into a 401k every year.
Does that change year by year?
Slightly.
Okay. Yeah. So for 2025, what was it? Do we know off the top of our heads?
I don't know off the top of my head, because
20-something thousand, 30?
It gets complicated. There's so much you can put into a SEP IRA versus a simple IRA. Then there's certain restrictions on how long it has to be in there before you could pull it out. A 401k itself versus the IRA, and then the ERISA law. There's a lot of things that happen in there. But overall, you have a limited amount of money you could put into a retirement account, which is a 401k. Retirement account, this is an important definition, is something that grows without capital gains tax issues. So you can buy and sell it whatever you want, and you're not paying a capital gain every time you sell the position. So it's a more efficient way to grow your money.
So if I bought Home Depot stock at $10 a share, and then later I sold it at $15 a share, that's my capital gain?
Yeah, the $5 will be the gain.
Okay.
But you don't pay that.
I'm not going to pay tax on it, yeah.
In the 401k.
Yes.
So this individual, they would have had to create a business, grow the business, kind of like Home Depot, but a smaller size.
Okay.
Let's say it's pest control. Let's say it's a painting business, whatever it is. They created a business, and then they were able to sell it. And after the proceeds, after capital gains tax, after all of that settles, it sounds like they got $1 million in their bank account.
Good for them.
Yeah. So what do you do with this? This gets a bit complicated. Let me explain why. Okay. You know how I like to pick on the oversimplified plans?
Yes.
So let's do that. Let's say he puts it into the market. Okay. Puts it all in the market. It's a nice stock bond fund portfolio. Excellent. He can take out 4% each year. Let's forget about market crash risk for a second. You know, the fact that if the markets crash, you take income out, you've accentuated the losses, making it more difficult to let's forget about that.
Okay.
How do you manage a portfolio, a brokerage account, a non-qualified, so it's not a retirement account, it's just your typical account. It's your typical money in the market. Every time you place a trade, if that position was held for less than a year, it's a short-term capital gain, which means you're paying income tax on it. So like your Home Depot example, you bought it for $10 a share. It's now $15 a share. You sell it as a $5 share increase.
Yeah.
Income tax.
Like just regular ordinary income.
Ordinary income, whether it's 10, 12, 22, 24%, whatever it is.
Because you held it less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so when you run your calculations, and this would show up on your 1040, I believe line 7, if I remember right, you're going to find the short-term and long-term capital gains summed up in there. That's basically income. So let's say you had $50,000 of short-term capital gains. It's basically you had a salary of or W-2 income or 1099 income of $50,000, and you're getting taxed on $50,000 as ordinary income.
Okay.
So if you were to actively manage this $1 million portfolio, 5%, that's $50,000, you're basically trying to grow your assets, and you're getting taxed all along the way.
Uh-huh.
So then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what about long-term investment time horizons? Let's say you just buy some indexes and you hold them for a while. Okay, now you might not deal with short-term capital gains, but you still got long-term capital gains, which is 0, 15, and 20%. But here's the kind of the cork. This is the wrench in the system.
Okay.
What do you pay a financial advisor for if their job is to assess your portfolio and not touch it for over a year? What if your goal long term is to not create short term capital gains? Maybe you realize that a 20% effective tax rate is a big pill to swallow. And does that make sense, by the way? If someone is charging you 1% and all the growth has a 20% tax bill on top of it, that slows down the growth. It makes it more difficult to keep up with the markets, whatever your risk level is. And I'm not saying to keep up with the S&P 500 unless your risk tolerance, your risk level, the volatility, the roller coaster is equivalent to what you want with the S&P 500. Some people don't want the ups and downs that the S&P 500 has. Maybe they don't want the ups and downs of what the Dow Jones has or the Russell 2000, whatever index fund you're looking for. Maybe they want some bond funds to stabilize it. That's another conversation. So now you've got to ask yourself, what's the purpose of the advisor if you're buying and holding something?
Yeah, because ideally you would want the advisor assessing where you should be and actively trading if you're going to pay him or her.
Many people hire a financial advisor for one purpose, and that's to grow their money better than had they grown their money on their own.
Okay, good definition.
And that makes sense. If you look at the net of fee performance, if you can get more money by paying a fee, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But just consider for a moment, you have to get rid of 20% of all your gains. So if you made 10% in the market, you really made 8% because 2% went away to taxes.
Okay.
So I'm assuming a 15% federal effective tax rate and then let's say a 5% state tax rate. Okay. That's an issue. And then you have the 1%. So now it's 7% growth instead of 10%. That difference is huge. And so there's this very interesting conversation you have to have with yourself about how do you enjoy your money while being tax efficient? How do you get the best net of fee portfolio and plan structure to get more out of your money? Now, the and that we're ignoring market risk with this. We're ignoring all sorts of risks in that oversimplified assessment. I'm just talking about performance and short-term versus long-term capital gains. There's a reason why people like retirement accounts, IRAs and Roths. So now you've got the other side, okay?
Okay.
The other side is the fixed index annuity is the most popular. Some people will argue the variable annuity. Some people will argue the fixed annuity. But annuity by definition is to get your money back, typically at a lifetime income situation or contract. So you give an annuity, let's say for easy math, $1 million, and they're going to give you $80,000 back for life.
Uh-huh.
I'm not quoting any sort of specific product. I want to highlight that it's going to seem like a good deal. Instead of taking 4% from your portfolio and hoping it works out, you're taking 8% guaranteed for life.
Yeah, on paper, like the way it's hitting me, like, well, it sounds great.
Yeah, but you got to understand inflation risk and liquidity risk. So inflation risk, after 10 years, assuming a 3% inflation, it's going to eat away at your buying power. So let's say, basically you lose 25% of your buying power after the first 10 years. By the 20th year, it's like, I don't know, you've lost 37.5%, if I remember the calculation right. That's a lot. It's hard to keep up with inflation if your income does not increase with it. Therein lies the issue of the lifetime income stream. So, and by the way, if you put non-qualified money, like money in your bank account, into an annuity, annuities are taxed as ordinary income.
Okay.
So any gain that comes out is going to be taxed as ordinary income.
Right.
If you annuitize it for life, then the gains are spread out over your lifetime, but your basis is negligible, right? They spread it all out, but it's still you're paying income tax on it. And income tax can affect your long-term capital gains brackets. It can affect your modified adjusted gross income. It can affect your supplemental income. That's Social Security taxes, standard deductions, what you qualify for, all these different things. It affects your tax bracket and how much you're paying in taxes. So anyone that has the majority of their assets in non-qualified accounts, think of a brokerage account, think of a TOD account, think of your checking and savings account. Everyone has a different name for it. a self-managed account, an SMA, whatever you want to call it, their retirement plan, I believe, becomes inherently not more complicated, but more sensitive to tax planning.
Yes, okay. As
Does
compared
does
to an
that all
IRA.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we there's a reason that we love the IRAs, right? The anything that's a retirement account, it's, quote unquote qualified money.
Yeah.
That's great because you're deferring taxes. That's not even a consideration.
You're not even deferring it. You're just not paying capital gains. I guess you're deferring the income tax to a later date,
Okay.
but you have control over how much you would take from it. Yeah, there's RMDs, but you can plan around that.
Okay.
So,
But this sort of non-qualified money that's just regular old money,
yeah.
that there's a lot of there's a list of things that you have to consider.
Now there's a benefit to this.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about the benefit.
The benefit to having
$1
a
million,
yeah.
if the plan is done right, if the portfolio is built right, if these strategies are explored correctly, could be more valuable than $1 million in an IRA.
Oh,
Here's
do
the
tell.
argument.
Do tell.
$1 million in your IRA, you still have to pay income taxes off that. Well, how much are income taxes? Let's assume that 20% effective tax rate. That means your $1 million is really probably worth around $800,000.
Okay.
$1 million, if it's managed correctly, kind of can stay around $1 million. Because if you're taking it out and you can navigate the long-term capital gains brackets, you're very tax efficient. So here's a couple of things just to consider. They said guy or gal,
Yeah,
it's
whoever it
in the
is.
bank account, right?
Yeah, it's in the savings account. $1 million in savings.
Okay, so there's no gain on this. They're just was that line 2B on the tax form? They're getting taxed on the interest, but that would be it.
Okay,
So
right.
not a huge amount, 4% or 3%, whatever
Right.
it is. Some of them are 2% right now. So that means everywhere they invest has that's the basis, the baseline from a tax standpoint. So just hear me out for a second. What if you were to take something like this, you build your plan together, and you realize how much income you need in different parts of your life? Maybe the first 5 years, you're going to need, I don't know, let's see. How old do you think this person might be?
Let's see. They sold a business. Maybe they're, I don't know, 61 or 2 or 59, I don't know, somewhere in there.
Let's say 62.
Okay.
So at 62 years old, they could take Social Security income, their benefits. So 62 and 1 month old, they're receiving their benefits, and now they are taking their benefits and their income for their portfolio and kind of just blending it together. Or they could delay their benefits to 67. That means they would have to take more income from their portfolio for the first couple of years. And then when Social Security starts, they can take less from their portfolio. So you want to optimize kind of, what you're taking and when you're taking it and so on, and then determine how much income do you need each year. And if the markets are up, it's really easy. You can take income from anywhere. But if markets are down, you have to take income from a principal protected source because you don't want to accentuate losses. Are you with me so far on all that?
Yep. Just tell me what are a couple of quick examples of principal protected sources?
Yeah. So on the fixed side, these are fixed investments or products. Like a CD grows at a fixed rate. A treasury grows at that fixed rate, not treasury funds, but treasuries themselves. You've got a fixed annuity, which grows at a fixed rate. So there's a couple of products that are growing at roughly a fixed rate. Then you've got your indexed products. So these they have growth potential, but no or little downside risk. When I say no or little downside risk, you can increase your growth potential, but there's going to be some downside exposure potentially. Okay. So this would be like a buffered ETF. So maybe you have up to 7% or up to 12% or whatever it is. But if you've got that 7% upside, maybe there's no or very little downside risk. So like the market would have to crash over 60% for you to start losing money. There's a buffer in there that buffers out those losses.
Yeah.
Maybe you want 10 to 12% upside potential, but you're going to take the first 5% downside or after 25%. These are complicated instruments, so do your due diligence. But that's a nice thing because if you put some money in there and you hold it for longer than a year, it's taxed as long-term capital gains.
With the, what was it, 0, 15, and
0%,
20?
50, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Then you've got structured notes. Okay, so you're going to be paying taxes on the dividend or the payout structure, but you can set those up to be monthly. Maybe you hold them till 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of different mechanics within that. Or you've got the fixed index annuity. Now, for fixed indexed annuities, they might be more preferential. There's an argument to say they should be more used in retirement accounts because if you put non-qualified assets in annuity, it's taxed as ordinary income.
Mm.
So do you see how there's a discrepancy here? If you want lifetime income, if you want income over a certain period of time, maybe a fixed index annuity could make sense. But if you're looking to be more dynamic about your portfolio, that if the markets go down, you're taking income from these sources and kind of managing things on a more systematic basis, but you want that flexibility, maybe they're not appropriate for you.
Right.
So you got to be careful with the tax side of it. Now, just for an oversimplified example, I don't like oversimplified anything, but I want to articulate the idea for a minute. Okay.
Okay.
What if you put, I don't know, 30, 40%, and don't go home and do this, by the way. This is a hypothetical example. This show is not financial advice. Don't say, well, I heard on the radio, or I heard on a podcast. Don't
Sure.
do that. Okay. But let's just say, for argument's sake, you put 40% of your assets in buffered ETFs as opposed to bond funds.
Okay.
So they've got growth potential. They've got a buffer to help hedge against that downside market risk. And then 60% of it, you just bought boring index funds.
Like SPY, QQQ, something like that. Okay.
Yep. Boring index funds, SPY, QQQ. You could RSP, so total market even weighted. You could do PK, is it PKW, which is that's an interesting one. It's a large cap growth index fund that favors companies that buy back their shares instead of paying a dividend, so it's
okay.
more tax efficient.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll get into that later.
All right.
But now you've built a portfolio that's got the growth. For 60% is focused on growth.
Yeah.
So if markets are up, easy place to take income from. And because you just bought everything at the beginning, what's the gain? It shouldn't be huge, but there's some gains. So you're selling some shares strategically to make sure that maybe your total gains being realized is less than $96,000 a year. So if your total gains are less than $96,000 a year, your income is tax-free.
And that's because
long-term capital gains.
Oh, okay.
As long as you can structure it right. So now imagine that you want to take a majority of your income for the first, let's say 5 years, so 62 to 67 or so. All of it comes from your portfolio. Because you just invested, there's a good chance that there's not as much of a gain to be concerned about. You've got your growth portfolio that you're taking income from, and that you're basically not paying tax on that because of the gains in long-term capital gains. And then at 67 to 70 years old, you then turn on Social Security, which is taxed as ordinary income, but only maybe 0, 50, or 85% of it is subject to taxes based on your provisional income calculation, which is your modified adjusted gross income. It's a lot right there. But you've structured it in a way that then your Social Security, when it turns on, is tax efficient. And then you pepper in on top of that just some other gains, and you're still incredibly tax efficient.
So it sounds like there's a way, if you're in this situation where you've sold a business and you have all this cash in a savings account and you don't have any qualified funds, there's still a way. There's still a path forward. Nothing.
It's just different.
Uh-huh.
It's a different conversation for a different person and their own risk suitability, their own risk tolerance, what they're willing to put up with, what they're not willing to put up with, what risks are they comfortable taking, what risks are they not comfortable taking. All of that is still going to deviate what we just talked about. But one of the last things we're going to want to do is buy a bunch of, let's say, dividend stocks, and you're going to grow your assets by taking dividends and reinvesting it. Because what do you do with the dividend? You get the dividend, you pay ordinary income on the dividends, and you're reinvesting them into something that creates a larger tax bubble or larger tax bill year over year over year. You want to be mindful about not only what you're investing in, but how you're going to pull the funds out and the headwinds along the way. So it's not, in my opinion, for people like this, about putting everything into municipal bonds and being tax efficient. There's a lot of missed opportunity because you're getting a low yield that still has reinvestment risk, a low yield that still has credit risk, depending on if you're buying Puerto Rican bonds or whatever type of bond that could go bankrupt. Or maybe they're more stable, and if they're more stable, you're getting less of a yield. You got to be aware of the risk versus potential reward balance and the tax implications. When people actively try to avoid one risk, they end up taking a lot more of other risks on, and they have no idea that they're doing it.
Should any of this $1 million go into a Roth IRA?
If they're working, they can continue to contribute. But if they're not working, you can't really contribute.
That's the
That's
Roth rule.
yeah. And so we talk about having an encore career. Maybe this person decides they want to keep working, but part-time just for fun.
Yeah, maybe they could get a job at Home Depot.
Yeah, it's the unintentional theme of this segment. But if they earned over $7,000 a year, great. Maybe or over $8,000, whatever the catch-up might be, depending on how old they are. And they could just put the funds into a Roth. But you have to earn income to be able to qualify for that.
I see.
So, but overall, I want to emphasize, too often we assume a financial advisor's job is just to grow your money. That is what many people assume, and they've hired their advisor to do just that. In my opinion, that is one part of an overall important comprehensive conversation. In this situation, because you're always looking at net of fee performance, could you get more out of your money if you hired an advisor or not? Someone that really had a good grasp on tax law in conjunction with growing your wealth, growing your assets, investing in the market, and making the adjustments. And saying, hey, markets are about to turn over. Maybe we do just sell, pay the taxes, and reposition you. There's a very healthy balance here, but it has to be, in my opinion, a more comprehensive conversation. Because if you hired the right person and you worked more holistically, there is so much money you could save over your entire lifetime when you're pairing investments and taxes in the conversation. And we haven't even touched how you could manipulate your healthcare premiums, because if this person is 62 years old, they need Affordable Care Act insurance. If they need Affordable Care Act insurance, there's all sorts of subsidies that you could utilize, saving you hundreds of dollars just in that year. What would you do with the extra money? So this is the tip of the iceberg. But if you have most of your money saved into a 401k or IRA, it's a very different conversation than if you have most of your money in a brokerage account or savings account, which is a very different conversation. If you have, let's say, an equal amount in your IRA, a brokerage account, and your Roth, and so on, the amounts and percentages that you've put into each of these different buckets will likely significantly shift your conversation on how you prepare for retirement.